If you have a pair of eyes and ears, you've likely seen or heard of Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the new JRPG that challenges the Final Fantasy series for the title of King of the Surrealists. It has an interesting single-player story with an enticing marriage between traditional turn-based combat and real-time dodge and parry mechanics to really spice things up quite a bit. This world is chock full of supremely attractive people fretting over a distant massive painter lady whose annual descending numerical art pieces spell instant death for anyone whose age exceeds that number. It's dripping with slow, dramatic tragedy, floating airfish, and mimes. In a lot of ways, playing Clair Obscur feels like playing through a turn-based French Perfume advertisement. On vit jusqu'à ce qu'elle peigne. We live until she paints. Son bingo français merdique. A shitty French bingo. On se pose des questions. We face questions like: Le poisson peut-il contenir du gluten? Can fish have gluten? Si vous trayez un mime, le lait tombera-t-il silencieusement? If you milk a mime, will it drop silently? Ces citrons sont-ils trop acides? Are these lemons too sour? La vie, c'est voyager dans un bonhomme ballon. Life is riding inside a balloon, man. Et jouer à l'étranger avec un bras de métal magique. And playing the stranger with a magic metal arm. Expédition toi. For those that come after. The setup to Clair Obscur is one of its best features. As mentioned in this alternate French dimension, 67 years prior, a large Rapunzel-like lady began painting glowing numbers on an obelisk in the distant horizon. Every year, this number drops by 1, and if your age exceeds the number painted, you instantly vaporize in what they call the gommage. This alternate dimension of France refused to surrender to the distant evil they dubbed the Paintress, and every year they send out expeditions, who are pretty much suicidal hit squads, to sail across the sea, find the Paintress, and shove her brushes up her French ass. They've never returned, and apparently never succeeded at either killing her or the whole ass brush thing. Our story begins with Gustave and Maëlle, two of the members of the latest run at the Paintress, Expedition 33. Gustave has recently endured the loss of his on-again, off-again girlfriend, and Maëlle is still young enough to have 7 years before her gommage, but is kind of pretty jack of the whole thing and figures she'll just take her chances. Unfortunately, as no one has ever returned, they don't exactly have any intelligence on what they're likely to run into.
We've lost intelligence! I repeat, we have no intelligence!
And so when they arrive, well, I'd say shit gets real, but it's closer to say that shit gets unreal. The job now is to regroup with any survivors left and just keep pushing towards the Paintress. Along the way, you'll recruit new members to your team and obviously discover some really interesting twists, but I'm not going to spoil anything here. All up, the campaign will likely take about 30 hours if you mostly beeline it, 40 hours with some side dalliances, and upward of 50 or 60 hours, I reckon, if you want to go for 100% completion. For the asking price, that's not half bad at all. More good news is that the gameplay is pretty bloody good. It definitely wears its influences on its sleeve. Even to me, who hasn't played the Persona series and have only a passing experience with the Final Fantasy games, it's pretty clear these were inspirations. The real pull of the game, and what you're likely to be doing 90% of the time, is the combat. These encounters mostly occur when running into mobs in the overworld or are scripted boss events. The combat, as I'm sure you've guessed, is turn-based. Each character has action points that are spent on skills, or gained by doing basic attacks, dodging, parrying, or by other clever means that you'll come onto a bit later. Your skills vary from mage-like spells for characters like Lune, to melee or ranged skills for characters like Gustave and Maëlle. Each character has a thing, like a mechanic that's unique to them, something I was labeling a macro strategy. For example, Gustave has a robo-arm that can be charged over several attacks to finally reach full 10 out of 10 charge. When it's unleashed, it becomes a devastating directed electrical explosion. Lune has mastery over all the elements, and each of her powers has the possibility of attaching a stain that may be channeled. Fire, lightning, light, dark, in a complementary skill next turn for increased damage. You can of course just use the standard attack button, but with some careful strategy, you can really inflict some serious damage. And I gotta say, a large part of my satisfaction was in landing some of these massive macro strat hits. There's also a micro strategy that's involved in the real-time mechanics too. You can't just sit back after launching an attack or defending against your enemies. There's quick time events that, if successful, will boost your attack damage during your assault, or in the case of defense, will mitigate incoming damage and even allow a counterattack if your button press is successfully timed. It's an excellent way to keep us invested in the battle. I mean, sure, it's nice to watch the slick attack animations play out normally without it, but I'm way more invested when I'm given agency and more control. I think most players would agree with me on this. Sometimes turn-based combat has an indirect feel, like it's a bit impersonal. I can't think of a better way to describe it currently apart from that word again, agency. Clair Obscur feels like it's giving me the best of both worlds. Turn-based combat mixed with that real-time control. There are some very deep systems rooted in the combat, and I've already mentioned some of those in those macro strategies. As your character progresses, they'll do the typical RPG thing of gaining levels, as well as acquiring new weapons and outfits. And you can min-max their stats to your heart's content, as well as upgrade weapons with materials found in the world. You'll also gain new skills that will cost a certain amount of action points, and will come with elemental properties like burn that you can stack, or breaking defense abilities, all sorts of cool stuff. So what I'm saying is, there are heaps of ways to build your team to complement each other or cover another's weakness. There's not much more I really wanted to cover in the gameplay section, because you'll pretty quickly identify whether the gameplay is for you or just not for you based on the footage alone. I will say that I played on my PC initially with mouse and keyboard, and I did find sometimes when I was trying to dodge or parry early in the game, I was frequently missing the window more than could be explained by my genuine lack of skill. I ended up swapping to the controller that I have, and I found it to be a much more reliable control scheme. So my takeaway is that if you have access to a controller, I'd pretty much highly recommend it over a mouse and keyboard. I've been playing on the medium difficulty setting, and I have struggled with a couple of the fights. Apart from the initial keyboard issues, particularly early in the game, I've been mostly dodging the attacks because the timing window for dodge feels slightly more forgiving than it is for the parry. Problem is that in dodging, I'm missing out on retaliatory attacks that come with a successful parry, and once I figured out the fight timings, and the fact that a lot of the time there are clear auditory clues to help time parries a little bit better, I was really surprised how much damage I could do on a parry. Sometimes even more than my own attack. So if you're having some difficulties, either drop the difficulty down or really listen for those auditory clues rather than watching the screen, and you might find that you're timing your parries a little bit better. Graphically, this game is breathtaking. It does get a bit exhausting with every new game review I do, going on and on about how stunning this new game is compared to whatever else has come out before, but damn, YouTube just won't do this game justice. Seriously, it is a looker. Once I got past the fact that everyone is
really ridiculously good looking,
as well as there being some kind of Instagram filter permanently on, I focused on the world and the creature design, and it's pretty amazing. The animations on the character movements, attacks, and even the stylistic menus that have been borrowed from Persona are very slick. I haven't really gotten sick of the whole UI in combat sections yet, or the animations on the same attacks over and over. Maybe it will happen eventually, but I'm still really digging the style. I have found when fighting some of the bigger characters that the camera won't really zoom out enough to give a nice indication of scale. Small gripe, but I don't really want to be looking at this golem crotch while my pre-teen girl character decides what attack to launch. I wasn't really sure where to talk about this, whether it was a graphics thing or a sound thing, so let's just cover it here before I move on to the sound proper. I did find, and it seems that I'm not the only one, that the characters' lip syncing with the English dialogue in the cutscenes is a little bit off.
When the time comes, you'll make the right decision. I'm sure.
Thank you.
Sometimes it feels like the audio is early, and other times it feels like the mouth movements are just plain wrong. I've read that the mocap was done before the voice actors' recordings. I'm not sure how true this is, but it would explain a lot of the inconsistencies. Again, it's a minor gripe, but I can't deny that I found it actually one of the more distracting things for the first 5 to 10 hours of the game. I did eventually get used to it, and really once I was into the combat and the gorgeous world, it just became a foible I managed to ignore. But I thought I should mention it because I made a specific note about it being weird early in my playtime. Otherwise, the voice acting is pretty solid. I'm gonna be a little bit mean here and say I was expecting a little bit more out of Charlie Cox as Gustav. He was good enough for me to like the character, but I was kind of expecting some earth-shattering performance. It's certainly not bad, and God knows I love Charlie Cox in a bunch of stuff, but I couldn't help but feel his emotional range was kind of muted. Jennifer English and Andy Serkis are really great, and even though I heard each of my team's battle lines 100 times, I actually didn't find them grating at all. Now I kind of feel bad for dissing Charlie's work. This was his first go at voice work in a video game, and while it is good, I feel like he's got more juice in him than he shows in this game. It's kind of a backward compliment, maybe? The music in this game is something else. During combat, the soundtrack is so flippin' good. Stressful string orchestral pieces, and even some bits that have weird synth house beat vibes. It's totally bizarre and totally engrossing. The composer Lorien Testard is earning whatever that paycheck was, plus interest. This is another solid soundtrack after South of Midnight to keep an eye on at the end of the year Game Awards. Not much to say at the conclusion here apart from this being an excellent game. Heaps of hours of entertainment for the retail asking price, great and compelling fantasy surrealist story if you're into that kind of thing, and a combat system that takes the best of turn-based RPGs and adds in that real-time dodge parry mechanic to make it feel more engaging on a moment-to-moment basis. Sure, it is very French, and at times quite weird, but despite its quirks, or maybe because of them, it sure is a lot of fun. This is another title that's available on Xbox Game Pass, which is absolutely grabbing some banger games this year. Whether you end up buying this at retail price or if it's on sale, you're very likely to get your money's worth of entertainment.
Merde!